It keeps me young, keeps me active. In a way, you are reliving your own childhood.
You know, say, oh, when you talk about grandparenting, your eyes light up. I say, yeah, it is really so exciting.
I had my first grandchild 12 years ago, so it's 12 years now. And since then, we've been having more and more grandchildren. We have a total of 15, 15 grandchildren, and 2 more are on the way actually. All right. So it's a full-time job for us. We're very joyful. All right, to come down to their level, you see. I have to adapt. I have to adapt. You see, like sitting on the floor, I rotate their toys, play with them.
The grandchild is really a symbol of, I would say, unity. It really helps my whole family to be closer.
I don't think it's a sacrifice. I think it's just a new season in my life.
When you hear your grandchild sing, you hear your grandchild read, I think it puts everything in perspective. It's worth it. All these activities that we revolve around Ellie really brings the entire family closer. Your actions as a grandparent affects not just your own children, your grandchildren and their children. This ability to influence your grandchildren is something that is uniquely yours.
Grandparents should play a supportive role to their own children, all right, in taking care of their own child.
Of being the last speaker, and truth be told, I have never spent so much time preparing for these 5 minutes. I think if I count the number of hours that went to the 5 minutes, it probably, is something that will surprise you. So, as you would have already guessed, this special announcement that I'm making really is about a new movement. And what is this movement? It's called Grander Together. Truth be told also, when we first began, we had another name for it, but the feedback was that it sounded a bit like civil service, right? So now we have Grander Together. And when I shared this with my daughter, she says, Dad, this looks like you. I say, I did not influence the design. So if you see any similarity, I did not influence the design. All right, so why are we starting this new movement, Grander Together? As you have heard from all the speakers, there is a role for grandparents. And why in November? Because the grandparents out there, are you aware that the 24th of November is Grandparents' Day in Singapore? I never knew until I started this work. So, hey, grandparents here, we have a day to celebrate. But seriously, the reason why I'm standing here as well is I'm part of a task force. And the task force began about 6 months ago, and obviously we did not have the benefit of this survey, right? Where the survey, is telling us that 8 out of 10 people who are surveyed believe that grandparents can bring benefits to their family. All right, so 6 months ago, this task force began, and actually the chairperson of this task force is none other than Alison. Alison is not standing here because she was trying to siam, but Alison, when we first picked this date, already had a commitment, but as life would turn out, Alison is here. So Alison, can you please stand up? All right. And this is very significant because when I was approached to do this and got connected with Alison, Alison and I were actually colleagues working in a bank 40 years ago. 40 years on, we are now involved in a movement, now as grandparents. And to make life even smaller, right, as Aria has already said, Aria is a chairperson of Cultivate SG. And when I first began the work at Cultivate SG, I then thought, hey, the dots are connected. And actually, and I keep on using the word actually because it's very important, that Aria and my daughter are same age. And actually, when I asked my daughter if she knows Aria, they have not crossed paths yet. But today's panel, when I shared the list with my daughter, she says that actually I know one of the speakers because they are colleagues in the same hospital. So Grander Together is a movement that seeks to, let me see, I'm supposed to control the slides. okay, to cultivate stronger intergeneration families in Singapore. So the previous panel has already debated and discussed what are the benefits and what are the challenges. So mindful of these challenges, well, we've set out to promote the benefits of grandparenting, and I can tell that as a grandfather, as a rookie grandfather, I've never been so happy in my life. Okay, I'll talk a bit about that later. And it's about strengthening intergenerational bonds, and I hear the feedback that actually we live in quite physically constrained homes, but bonding is not geographical. Bonding, in my mind, transcends geography and space. I'm bonded to my granddaughter, even though she doesn't live with me, and more of that later. But more importantly, it's really about transmitting enduring values. And for me personally, growing up, unlike Hamid, I really, when I sat there listening to Hamid, I had a bit of envy because growing up, I never knew my grandparents. I never knew my grandparents. I do not know how they look like. I do not know their names at all. Because my parents were penniless immigrants from Swatow, China. And their marriage was an arranged marriage, and my dad passed away when I was barely 8 years old. So I never knew my grandparents. So for me to stand here speaking about grandparenting, where do I learn all these, what should I do as a rookie grandpa? Thankfully, I've got my mom. My mom passed away when she was 98 years old. And of course, my in-laws as well. How they took care of my only child when she was growing up, how they took care of her selflessly. They were always putting my daughter ahead of themselves. That's really about grandparenting in my mind. And then later on, when I started to, I suppose when I listened to Dr. Liang Wei about grandparenting, then I realized that probably as someone growing up without grandparents, etc., I'm probably passing some of my, what he mentioned as some psychological trauma, right? I'm asking myself, am I over on the ball as a grandfather? Why? Because I am now, as the term, I suppose, semi-retired. So I will fetch Ellie to school and fetch her home as well. And then when she is having her lunch, after she has given thanks, I will start to have conversations with her. And this was how I think I was making up for the fact that when I was growing up, I did not have grandparents. I did not have the I didn't go through as a child knowing how was it like to hold my grandparents' hands. How was it like that if they were reading to me or how they were singing with me. So I suppose I could be compensating this, talking to my granddaughter. And even though she's now 2.5 going to 3, our conversation will talk about her day in school, her friends, her fun time with Mama and Dada. And our recent conversations is now about her going to school. So recently, she decided that she wants to go to school in her pram. So then the conversation went to say, yeah, I prefer Dada to drive me because Dada cars go vroom, vroom, vroom. So I said, oh, Dada's car is very fast. How about Mama? Yes, Mama car also very fast. How about Grandpa? Then she looked at me and said, Grandpa, you hold up the cars on the road. So I said, oh, you mean to say Grandpa is slow? Then she smiled. Then, of course, I tested her. How about Grandma? And of course, those of you who know my wife, she's not very comfortable in driving, and so she definitely has a certain speed in driving. So how about Grandma? And she says, I like Grandma's driving. So then I said, but Grandma drives even slower. She says, no, I like Grandma's driving. So I also wonder, where did my granddaughter, Ellie, at this tender age, learn to be so diplomatic? It must be because we've been talking and she's been listening to us. Talking about things is a very big thing in my family because this is how we will discuss issues and challenges. And we heard in the survey just now, right? We saw this. that while 8 in 10 Singaporeans believe that grandparents bring important contributions to caregiving, the number drop when you talk about actual involvement and actual raising up. And in my mind, I think the challenge is that as grandparents, we sometimes forget our roles. So I remind myself that as a rookie grandpa, please don't overstep. But more importantly, I think, is that what is my role vis-a-vis my daughter and my son-in-law? Am I respecting their authority? Am I trying to usurp their authority in the way I grandparent my granddaughter? So with that, I thought I would end here because in the interest of time, that the work is cut out for us as grandparents, right? One of the speakers shared this very useful slide of 4 stages: single, married, parents, and you end as grandparents. But I think no. To me, the cycle doesn't end as a grandparent. As a grandparent, my role comes back again to learn all over again, how do I be a better grandfather to Ellie. So I've been talking so much about Ellie, so this is Ellie. So this was Ellie with me in the first Christmas, and that's my daughter's pet, Katsu. And this photo really brings me so much joy, and I think the grandparents here will appreciate that as well. So I would really encourage the grandparents and even all of you here who are not yet grandparents to be part of this Grander Together movement. And before I end, I want to acknowledge the people who are in the video. Gladys, please stand up. Gladys is in the video as well. And of course, you saw Hamid in the video. And Alison, please stand up, Alison. Yes, Alison as well. All right. So with that, let me end here. And I look forward to working with all of you on our Grander Together movement. Thank you.